And welcome to the No Assembly Required podcast, a podcast where we talk about absolutely nothing of importance. And now your host. She has her phasers always set to stun, RedRomina. Your second host. A girl who only knows about Generation 1 Pokemon, even though I could swear it was before her time, Audrey Ember. And now your final host, the man who lives to torment the host of this podcast and nothing else every Thursday evening, Roberto Blake. Welcome to the No Assembly Required podcast, where we film in front of a live YouTube audience. Please like and subscribe. NARP.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the intro for tonight. What'd you think of that one?
It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
I think I know more than the first generation. I need to do
No, it's
like
too
a
late. My
quiz or
intro
something.
stands.
Once the intro is out there, it is fact.
It is
It's
fact.
on Wikipedia.
Darn it.
Yeah, these are facts and not of
Don't
the
you know
alternative,
that's how
and they are not
Wikipedia
of the
articles are
alternative
considered?
variety.
Whenever Roberto speaks, the words just float into the air and somehow land onto a Wikipedia page. That's how Wikipedia.
Because Wikipedia is always right.
Always and forever. Always and forever. It is not up for debate or for dispute. It is now and forever shall be.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
In Wiki we trust.
No, I wish.
Oh,
I wish
no.
that was. I mean, that's my anthem. I don't know about you guys, but
Isn't
I live and
Wikipedia
breathe.
like dying?
Better not be.
I think they are having financial difficulties, and so they need the support of readers like you.
They
Yeah,
always
I've
have
seen
financial
that.
difficulties, but
That's
Yeah.
true though.
they
I mean,
do
if I had
rely
an
on
absurd amount of
donations.
money, I would like. If I had an absurd amount of money, I'd probably bankroll them at this point.
Well, I do donate to Wikipedia.
They should just at the bottom of every Wikipedia entry, they should just post Google ads and be done with it.
True, they could, but
They something integrity, something.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't want to be that way.
Yeah.
I'm like that's like anyone who thinks that you can't trust something because there's advertising in it or at the bottom and everything like that needs to get their hell over it and enjoy the free damn internet. Brought to you by ads. The end.
True.
Back in my day, nothing was free. So like you can either pay for stuff and or you can whine about the ads. Like you
I mean,
Damn.
yeah. But they have been asking for donations ever since the beginning, and I have been donating
I've
because
been
I do
donating.
believe in Wikipedia and I love what they do, and basically I don't read any newspapers. I don't read any articles unless someone sends it to me. Like you sent me that the UBI one.
yeah.
I read that one because
Yeah.
you sent it to me. So I only really read like what my friend sent, unless it's from a mass media company that I don't approve of. Then I do not read it.
Yeah.
I just glance over it.
Do
And
you feel that's where most people are at right now?
I don't feel like enough people are at that place.
Oh, that's fair.
Right now.
That's fair.
I don't feel most people are at.
No,
that
that's
place,
fair.
but I
Most
do
people
feel a lot
do
of
still
people-
mainstream is
I do feel that this whole COVID-19 crisis has propelled people to think more profoundly about where they get their news from.
I don't agree with that
Has
at
it
all.
though?
No, no, it hasn't.
So much.
I
No,
don't
it
fake
hasn't
stuff
because
going
people
on.
still believe these stupid asinine conspiracy theories, and they believe people.
But
that,
people
like,
will always believe that. But I
So-
definitely feel like there have been some people, and I'm just saying because of the people that I know, like friends that I know who had different ideologies or had very specific mass media companies that they were, subscribed to,
Yeah.
have now realized, oh, there's other perspectives that are out there, and
Yeah.
maybe journalism is a little bit too sensationalized now.
Well, Romina, you're the fun kind of conspiracy theorist that wants to like talk about, aliens and UFOs like me and cryptozoology and everything.
I'm
and
glad
whether-
that's on my title now.
Like that's where
Conspiracy
like but
theorist.
yeah but like you're the fun kind of quirky conspiracy theorist like me. Like we're all like into quirky fun conspiracies that like aren't about the Illuminati or the secret cabals or any of this nonsense people want to believe in, but right now you have these quacks and you have people and you have like disgraced you have this like disgraced dude that's like disgraced in the medical community convincing everybody that Bill Gates is like behind COVID-19 and it's his evil master plan, and like you've got all these people believing that Bill Gates is going to usher in the mark of the beast and all this lunacy and everything like that. It's like, I'm sorry, it's like, do you not understand that like this man has better things to do, and if he wanted to make another $1 trillion he could? Like,
yeah,
it's absurd. Come on. Smart people aren't really interested in dominating the underclass. They're more interested in doing smart people things.
Maybe he's just an evil mastermind,
Nah, if he wanted to be an evil mastermind, he could literally... If he wanted to be an evil mastermind, the things he could do, he's smart. He's like, trust me, if really smart people want to form the Legion of Doom... Remember when we did a whole podcast where I did a rant about supervillains? All being basically disgraced scientists who were underfunded? Like, everyone in the Legion of Doom... Everyone in the Legion of Doom from like the whole Super Friends thing is like a scientist whose funding was cut. Trust me, if smart people decided to rule the world, there'd be nothing anyone could do about it. They would just form the Legion of Doom. You know what? In fact, let me just go and pick out the swampland. Pick out the swampland. Legion of Doom, we're doing it. Let's go.
Wow. Audrey, what say you to all of this? Because I feel like we've been talking a lot.
I say aliens are real because...
Wow.
Did you guys see
That's what you got out of that?
Well, didn't the government release all of the... Yeah. Like,
all right,
I believe it.
Hold on. I do have something to talk about.
Okay.
All of that. So,
Okey-doke.
Don't look at me like that, Audrey.
I'm not done with the aliens. What are you talking about?
All right, so we are talking about that the videos that the Pentagon officially released, but those same videos were already released sometime last year.
But they didn't know if they were real.
Now the government's confirmed
they were real. Tom DeLonge confirmed it, and if Tom DeLonge confirms
maybe
it,
he lied.
I believe Bob Lazar to be very real with everybody. I believe Bob Lazar.
All right, but so Tom DeLonge. I don't know if you guys know this, but Tom DeLonge has started a business. He has a company now, and it's called To the Stars Academy, and he's looking for investors. And this academy, the whole purpose of it is to gather a team together to do research and then create technology based on those findings and then share those findings with the world by telling stories. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting company to look out for, just because of the combination of like the variety of different people that are going to be needed in order to put this team together. Now, I don't know exactly like the details of what.
So Tom,
who is Tom?
Is Tom building the Legion of Doom? Yes or no?
Who is Tom? I don't know who Tom is.
All right,
I don't know the names of.
Do you know who Blink 182 is? Oh my God! Please.
Oh dear God, you sweet summer child.
Oh my God.
I've heard of it.
I'm dying right now. I can't believe this. All right.
What are we going to do tonight, Brian?
All right. Well, I guess we're starting a new spreadsheet. We're starting a new spreadsheet of
music that should be listened to.
I recognize names, but I just don't know.
Wow. All right. So
stay over here.
Audrey.
So now that we've shamed Audrey off of the podcast once again due to her lack of pop culture savvy.
All right. So as Alex Perucci here, who is watching in the live stream right now, live with us. By the way, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not watching us live, then please subscribe to us on YouTube. You can find us, the No Assembly Required podcast. You can subscribe to us. And you can join us live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so you can be a part of the conversation.
Do we have an official URL yet?
So Romina has been very preoccupied this week.
That's fine.
And hasn't done yet.
Because
we will have an official URL. Yeah. Probably
Audrey's
tomorrow.
been doing a great job of getting the audio podcast out since she's been put in charge in that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah, she absolutely had. By the way, if you think that Audrey has been doing a really great job, then give us 5 stars. So, wow. Anyway.
What are we up to? Episode 10 now?
We're in 11.
Yes.
Aha, they thought we wouldn't last.
I think all the episodes come out on Fridays. On like Spotify and stuff. So
sweet.
Oh, see, more incentive for people to join us live because then they get it first.
You get it one day early. Or actually, it's more like 2 weeks early.
Hey, you know,
2 weeks behind right now.
People care about that kind of stuff. So anyway, just to go back to backtrack to Blink 182, as Alex, who is in chat right now, says
Blink 182, then Aliens, and then we'll probably eventually get to the actual topic of tonight.
Right. So Alex says that Blink 182 is the greatest punk band of all time. That's arguable.
See, I recognize the name. Okay? I'd probably recognize some of their songs if I heard them.
All right. So okay, all the small things.
Small things.
Truth cares. No? All right.
Maybe.
It ain't so. I will not go.
So Tom Long is
oh wait, damn, we're going to get copyright
of this band. He's a lead guy of this band.
We cannot sing anything. We will get copyright claimed. I'm not even joking right now.
Yeah, well, I messed up a couple of the keys so that the algorithm doesn't pick up. But so basically, he's just the front runner of this band, but he is very much into disclosure, which is the process of disclosing the information to the public regarding, UFOs and all that stuff, and alien first contacts and all those things. So anyway, so he's created that company. So that's why that whole segue happened, because you said aliens were real because you interpreted something that Roberto said as that. And that's why this whole conversation in this podcast episode has derailed completely.
Nice.
Yes. Oh, part of the plan.
But we haven't talked about what you think about the actual videos.
What video? Oh, the alien. Well, I don't know. It's old news. What do you want me to say about it?
It's old.
I believe it when I saw it. Look, I was in New York in what was it, 2009 October or 2010 October, and there was this there were these lights. It was 5, 6 o'clock. I just got off work, and we're all staring, and we're all like, what the hell? And we're like, are you guys seeing this? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? And there was these lights, and they were moving in a way that cannot be any type of aircraft that we have. And it was still daylight. It wasn't dark. It was getting dark. It was again, it's October. It's 5 or 6 or something in October. And everybody was thinking the same thing and saying the same thing. Is this is happening. They're coming. Or we all were on the streets of New York in the middle of Manhattan,
they're coming,
staring up like this. All of us yeah, it's
we're just waiting. You're like, yes.
This is happening right now. This is a real thing. We were and we were all touching each other to make sure we're not lucidly dreaming, or that it's not something it's hey, this is happening, right? This is, and we're yeah. I mean, New Yorkers are we're slightly superstitious like that, right? So we're sitting there and we're all just craning our heads up. It's this is happening right now, and that's a thing that I experienced. That was one thing I experienced. That was and so that was a group experience. That was okay, this isn't So I think that I mean I don't have an explanation for that other than I don't have an explanation for that.
So Michael in the chat says, I don't think it's that big a deal because it's evidence, not proof. And we're in the stage we need actual proof, which is precisely how I feel as well.
That's fine.
I mean, it is what it is. It's an unidentified
I just tend to,
object.
yeah, I just, and with the military record stuff, with the radar things, I believe those things. And you're right, it's evidence. It's not the same thing as proof, but this is an area where I have there are things I am skeptical about, and there are things where again, I know it's not the same thing as proof, but my gut says that it's you know what? Because again, you have to think they would not trust us with that information. They would not trust us with that information. Then the thing is, if the capitalist in me believes that they've been profiteering off of reverse engineering technology to the best of their ability for the longest time, because the leaps we've made in the last 50 years can be explained by this. if you really think about it, the leaps we've made in the last 50, 60 years can be explained by this. And they're just incrementally giving us piecemeal this stuff a little bit at a time. And they're doing it because, I mean, looking even with the current economic crisis, they don't want to always be like straight up with us about a lot of these things because of what we'll do and how it'll impact the economy. That's what makes me, this thing, the COVID-19 stuff makes me think more that there's a financial incentive to not tell us if they have advanced technology all up front at once. And maybe they just want to keep, maybe the fossil fuel industry alive again. This is where it's like, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy nut. I'm just saying that's like, if I were them, that's a direction, that's an option that I could see going.
My first thought that when you said that it's like alien technology or whatever could have helped reverse engineer, I was like, maybe Steve Jobs had some sort of, because he like invented something new out of nowhere. Maybe.
Well, it was he invented, and he actually all he did was really make a more advanced version of the Walkman. Like that was like, I mean, to be very real with you, he made an updated version of the cell phone. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like those things were innovations to things that already existed. It wasn't really something out of nothing.
True. That would be pretty funny though.
He built a better mousetrap. Statistically, I believe that there's life on other planets. I just think that the universe is too big.
There's got to be something out there that's watching. That's more intelligent than us.
I definitely believe that. I also believe the possibility of it being more likely rather than interstellar, intergalactic travel. I believe that extra-dimensional visitors are more likely.
Wait, what does that mean?
other planes of reality, other universes.
Oh my god!
Like many worlds' interpretation of time, or other higher planes of existence. I believe that's more likely than even. I think that extraterrestrial life statistically is very likely, but I also think extra-dimensional experiences are even more likely.
Different
like
planes
the
of
Avengers.
Yeah, like I mean that introduces some concepts of it, sure, but like.
Dang.
Science fiction novelist Arthur C. Clarke, he says two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not, and both are equally as terrifying. So
yeah, that is equally terrifying. Like to think that, here's what I do believe. I think it's entirely possible that there have been many intelligent, higher thinking species, but I don't think that all of them survived their encounters with the intelligence to do nuclear fission. Meaning that they got the nukes. I think that there's been many other species that got nukes and screwed it up. That's my thought. My theory is the reason we haven't run into as many other beings out there is that they got nukes and they screwed it up. So they didn't get to interplanetary travel because they got nukes and screwed it up. And we're like right at the cusp of that. If I was smarter, I would have already dedicated. If I was smarter and I was more of a physicist and I had the patience for it, I would have already dedicated my life to creating technology that could disperse particles that completely neutralize nuclear fission. I would have basically built what in science fiction is called an N-jammer. I would have built a nuclear jammer. I would have made nuclear weapons obsolete by just dispersing particles in the air that would not allow for a nuclear fission reaction to happen. I would have just made the nukes worthless. If I could snap my fingers, that's the first thing I would do if I was that smart.
Dang.
I would just build an N-jammer and say, yeah, countries of the world, I just screwed over your entire plan, and I just saved the planet. You're welcome. Give me my Nobel Prize. Here's your N-jammer technology. Boom. All right, I just dispersed the N-jammer particles, and there are now no nukes. And I did steal that from an anime, by the way. But I would make that. I'd make that happen. That'd be if I was smarter, if I was a physicist, that would be my only goal, is make nukes irrelevant.
All right, so
make nukes trash again.
I'm not sure if you guys saw my tweet about the episode in Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, about the dinosaurs.
Yeah, I did. That was cool.
All right, so since Audrey is blinking, which is the signal of help me, I'm lost. There's an episode of Voyager in which they encounter, well, they play with the idea that dinosaurs did not become extinct and actually went to so they didn't become extinct. They actually were isolated, like in an isolated continent, and they evolved into a humanoid type species and eventually developed interstellar travel and traveled, and then they went light years and light years away, and they actually forgot where they came from. So they're actually like a humanoid, like sapient species. Like they just like live very far away, and they just don't remember that there used to be dinosaurs on Earth, like forever ago, because they just evolved. So maybe freaking dinosaurs never went extinct. You just went into space.
Here's, what's interesting about that idea. What if we already, but here's what's interesting. We're trying to colonize Mars, and Elon wants to take us to Mars, right? And we know that Mars, now that we know about the water on Mars, and we know about the stuff that, like, it's possible that a long time ago, Mars used to be like Earth. Mars used to be like Earth. And look at it now, and look at the makeup, and look up, what the makeup of the atmosphere, like what's left of the atmosphere and the soil, and the water that they found and all that stuff. You know what I think is entirely possible that would be really insane to think about? Imagine for one moment, like let's think this through. Isn't it entirely possible that we used to live on Mars at one point as humans, and we screwed it up and we nuked Mars? But we got smart enough to where we were able to jettison ourselves to Earth, and we like did that, but we lost contact with Mars, and the entire civilization crumbled, and they destroyed it, and there's literally nothing left, and we literally forgot kind of where we came from. And what if you looked at it, not to get on anybody's nerves or anything like that, but what if you think about everything that we know in history and even everything in mythology and theology? What if it's all like a way of explaining the War of the Worlds that happened when humanity fell from grace because we screwed up Mars, and then we jettisoned ourselves to Earth, and all of our prehistory is just what the oral stuff that was handed down, because like you had regular normal people and maybe a little bit of the military, and none of the scientists really survived the whole thing. So like our best and brightest minds, or the bare minimum, our best and brightest minds did the engineering for all of the pyramids and our primitive structures, and then they died because of whatever. You get what I'm saying? Because think about it right now. If we go to Mars now, and we screw up Earth, there's gonna be people talking about how the good old days of Earth, and their great grandkids will never have seen Earth, and like all of this will just be nonsense to them. They won't Earth will be superstition, Living life on Earth will be like an old Bible story to them. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
We might have repeated this cycle 3 times already, for all I know.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we essentially are the dinosaurs.
Yeah, in that analogy, we'd be the dinosaurs. Like
right.
we like screwed it up. Think about it. Isn't it possible that we literally have swapped Earth and Mars like 3 times already?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Like, you actually bring a really great point to the dinosaurs. In this scenario, they forgot where they came from because they created a doctrine that says otherwise.
Yeah.
And so essentially they have their own, Adam
religion
story, right?
Yeah.
Which is what we have. But where did we actually come from? Did we come from that? I mean, the theory is that we're actually fish before, right? So it's like, I think like there's definitely a lot more to it than just, we were just people who were living on Mars. We could have been an entirely different species, like look different. We could
be an extragalactic species, and we could just be a lost colony for all we know. Just like how in parts of the world, there are isolated parts and pockets of the world where we find indigenous people that have never had human contact.
I think about that all the time. But more importantly, Gabe actually posed a question in the chat, which I'd like to bring up. And I'd like to ask you, Roberto, because you were talking about this earlier. Do you think that Audrey actually watches movies in other dimensions?
In
Wow.
the many worlds interpretation of time, there is a reality where Audrey decided to become a movie buff without our intervention.
Wow.
There's
Dang.
if think about all possibilities in the many worlds interpretation of time, there's the infinite Earths, just like they talk about in DC Comics, the infinite Earths, right? So in the infinite Earths that maybe haven't been obliterated by COVID-19, then in one of those Earths, there's an Audrey that's a like super movie buff and shames us on this podcast.
Imagine if the roles were flipped.
Oh, how the
Great.
tables have turned. It's possible you know more about YouTube than us. It's possible you, and by that I mean like YouTube culture, big YouTube. It's possible you know more about YouTuber-y things than we do.
Maybe.
So I
feel
create
like
more
I
than
was-
consume.
Yeah.
I don't
I mean, just because you were listening to the Beatles when you were 16 years old doesn't mean that you know any more than someone who just discovered the Beatles, you know? It could be
That's fair.
like the time and age is irrelevant. It's more so like where you're spending your time and stuff.
Facts. Facts. I mean, I've been on YouTube a long time. It doesn't mean that I watch as much YouTube as other people and know. I know a lot about the history. I know about old YouTube. You know what I mean? I know a lot about old YouTube, OG YouTube. But there's also a lot of OG YouTube. But again, I learned a lot of that after the fact because there's a lot of time. Like when I was coming up as a YouTuber and when I was doing my content, I wasn't really into YouTubers. I was into the platform. I had a
I probably
handful
know
of
a lot
YouTubers I
of
was
the
into.
memes. I know all the memes.
So yeah,
Connor
you know
has
more about meme
8
culture. I don't
years.
know nothing about. I don't understand the spaghetti meme.
Oh my god.
What's the spaghetti?
My
mean?
spaghetti, is that one?
Yeah,
Oh.
I don't really get it.
See, I know this. And
See?
Romina doesn't.
You would understand like all the memes
Why are you
that
calling me
PewDiePie.
out?
You would understand like all the memes that PewDiePie is into and stuff like that. Like when I see those YouTube rewinds and they're all memes, I don't get it, and I'm not interested in it, and I feel like it's spastic and like incoherent, and I'm like, no, this isn't better than the thing that YouTube came up with, bad as it might be. And that's an unpopular opinion, but again, I'm about to be 36. I'm probably just the old man internet here to tell you how it was in the AOL days. It's like, remember that
AOL.
dial-up, remember the dial-up and the DSL and all the things. Remember Angel Fire, Lycos, GeoCities? That was free hosting. 20 megabytes, that's all you got.
Film
The
culture.
LimeWire. Oh, we had the LimeWire. We had the Bear Share
Oh,
and the Napster.
So Connor in chat says that this means that there exists a world where Audrey knows everything and Roberto and Romina are uncultured. So
Facts.
are you proposing, Connor, that Audrey is uncultured in this
Ooh,
timeline?
shots fired. Shots fired.
Dang. I mean, I'll accept that. I think it's pretty
Wow.
obvious.
Don't accept it. Audrey,
I'm
you
fighting it. I'm watching
have a choice.
the movies on your list.
You have a choice,
What's
which
the
I
last
think
one you watched, Audrey?
yeah. It's the one last
The one
week.
from last
All right. Well, I guess
I
guys,
didn't watch one this
we'll
week,
have
I'm sorry.
episode content here for our podcast for many years to come.
No,
Is that
I'm
this
watching Wes Anderson movies right now because I'm doing a video on it.
Those
Okay,
are on the list.
Are they? Aren't they?
They're not on the list. I didn't add them on the list because I'm biased, because I'm
Oh.
a huge Wes Anderson fan. So I didn't add them to the list because
Oh.
although I love his work,
Okay.
I feel like it's still not that ingrained in pop culture. He's only infiltrated the pop culture world in like the past maybe like 8 years.
I still
which I
feel,
feel
she has
isn't
to watch.
as-
I still feel like she has to watch Basic Instinct.
I mean, it's on the list.
I know.
What do you want me to do? You want me to like sit her like Clockwork Orange style and like open her eyeballs? And,
Wait, which one do you guys want me to watch next?
no, we
Basic-
said you were gonna scroll
You-
and
you-
pick
you
one
pick.
out.
Yeah, I
random,
am.
You pick.
I'll scroll.
You pick.
And you were
I-
supposed to tell us so that we could prepare in case we haven't seen the movie in a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although the
I'll
card
read a little
catalog
bit
in my
in advance.
brain can probably still recall almost all the details of said movies.
See, that doesn't happen for me. I don't remember like all the details of movies.
So I have almost. It's not 100% perfect recall. It only works for things I actually am interested in and care about and like it had any emotional connection to. But when it comes to that, I have near perfect recall. I can tell you almost every single trivial fact about the 1980s Ninja Turtles run. I'm not even joking.
Only the important things.
I can
Only
tell
the
you.
important things.
I can also tell you. I can almost quote line for line the Ninja Turtles movie from the 1980s. I'm not even joking. I used to annoy the hell out of my parents with this.
Audrey is speechless. She's speechless.
I can sing most of the intro songs, but we'll get copyright claim to a lot of the 80s and 90s cartoons.
For me, I feel like it's a very visual thing. So if I enter a room like Roberto, I can as your room was, your office, your studio, as I last walked in there, I could probably draw it out and tell you where things were.
Damn.
That's the kind of memory that I have where I can walk into a room. Like when I was working on sets and like I was doing more
should have gotten
production.
that museum job. That job would have been, they should have just paid you more.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Actually, you should apply for the job and then try to negotiate up the salary.
I did. They were very like, this is how much it's going to be. Just let us know if it works for you or not.
It's possible, though, that their budget is crap. So,
but also at this point, I figure they're not going to be.
At this point, they probably don't have a budget to
Not
hire anyone
exactly.
for anything. Because to be fair, museums don't make a lot of money.
Yeah, but these museums have a lot of funding behind them. They're very nice museums.
But those, most of that funding, sure, is ate up by the exhibits.
Right, I was gonna say they spend
maintenance.
most of their
And the
funding
historical
on
preservation, like that stuff is expensive.
the architecture and the real estate as well, because they're right on the entrance of like
Can you
Miami
imagine the
Beach.
taxes? Oh my god.
Yeah.
All I do is think about how much the taxes on something is whenever I see it, you know.
And that brings us into our conversation, the topic of the night, adulting.
Yes.
Did you guys like that smooth segue?
Oh, that was very well done, madam. That was very well done.
Thank you. By the way, tonight's teacup is brought to you by Audrey. She told me to select the Good Luck Kitty.
Yes.
Ooh.
I thought you were gonna make me tea too.
I did. I'm just drinking it for you.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. By the way, I agree with the chat. Ninja Turtles 3: Turtles in Time was absolute garbage, but it could have been great. It could have been great. It could have been great, but it was garbage. But it also was a jump the shark moment because like you don't need to introduce time travel and mysticism when you've already introduced mutations and science fiction. You don't need to then introduce time travel and Japanese lore at that point. It's a jump the shark moment, and it really made no sense to go that direction. They should have just continued cleaning up the Foot Clan and the remnants of that, or dealt with a all-out interpersonal family feud within the Ninja Turtle clan, and that would have been better. They also did not bother to do anything in the development of the relationship with April O'Neil and Casey Jones. So, like, Ninja Turtles 3 was a wash. I could have written a better script, and I don't say that lightly.
Controversial.
Very
I don't think that's a controversial opinion at all. I think everyone agrees with me. Everyone agrees with me because I'm absolutely right.
Oof, Roberto. All right, so Beanie says, I adult very poorly, but one day.
What is the definition of adulting?
What is the definition of adulting? I feel like the definition of adulting is living your life as an adult.
Wow.
In a responsible way.
Actual gold.
In a responsible way. That's exactly where I was going. See, Roberto's already finishing my
You
sentence.
should have just ended it as an adult. That was great.
It was I meant it to be a very suspenseful pause. I'm trying to keep the listeners, increasing our watch time here.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, because I think what it is, and I made a huge tweet about this once, which was, there comes a point in your life where you have to accept your responsibilities and you have to do the things that you're required to do and make sacrifices and take risks that you might not want to do. And I feel like that is adulting, where you have to make a choice, a responsible choice, even if it means sacrificing or risking something, because it's the right thing to do. And that is, I feel like, the definition of an adult.
Or again, doing the responsible thing, even if it's the inconvenient thing. Doing the responsible thing or the right thing, even at personal cost. Doing the responsible or the right thing, even though it's less enjoyable. Or doing the responsible or right thing, even though it might mean doing something not enjoyable at all, because it puts you in the best situation long term. Being an adult is about living your life with the understanding or the forethought that life, you're operating under the assumption that life is long, whereas young people operate under the assumption that life is short.
So Beanie in the chat here, he says, pre-COVID-19, I'd say it's the ability to maintain a lifestyle by paying bills and taxes and staying healthy. Now,
that I by itself, I think, is a misconception.
Right. I was just going to say, I feel like those things are very important, but I don't think that they define living responsibly
or being an adult, because the thing is, you can live responsibly and those things can be taken off the table.
Right.
That is the fact that we conflate that with what the standard of being here's the problem with why adulting sucks. I'll just lay it out partly. Like, and you guys feel free to let me know how you feel about this, but I'm just like, I've been thinking about this all day. Like, the idea that we give a merit badge for adulthood. We give these merit badges for adulthood, and here are the merit badges. Go to college, get a degree, get married, have 2.5 children, get a good paying job with a decent salary, buy a house and get into absurd debt, retire, keep your job for as many years as possible. These are the goddamn merit badges. And I'm just kind of like disgusted by the fact that you cannot be an adult in people's eyes if you don't get these merit badges, no matter what else you do that is meaningful or that makes you happy or that demonstrates that you have acted responsibly. You can act responsibly and do none of those things.
Right. And you can also do all of those things and not be responsible.
You can do all of those things and be wildly unhappy. You can do all of those things and not end up successful. You can do all of those things and then, through no fault of your own, not have them work out.
Right. All of those things, I feel like, I mean, they're all very tangible and very materialistic things. But they're
also the measurement by which our parents and grandparents defined success in their life that had nothing to do with their individuality. They were just checkboxes. The idea, at least in the Western world of America, is all about these arbitrary checkboxes that it completely have nothing to do with optimizing yourself as an individual. That's my thought on it.
Audrey, I'm interested in knowing what your definition of this is, and because you're kind of in your transitional phase of adolescence and adulthood and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, like when I was in high school, I was very much in a bubble where I believed that, because that's like all I knew. That's what my friends were planning on doing. That's what I was planning on doing. And then when I went to college and I realized that you could, actually do other things besides that checklist, like there are other options. I know that sounds ridiculous, but literally when you're like young and that's all like you see and hear all the time, and that's all people are talking about and kind of expecting.
Well, the framework of traditional education. Go ahead.
Like a breakthrough, almost.
Traditional education teaches you to pick your future out of the community barrel.
Yeah. Like literally, even it comes down to little things. Like I remember at school we'd do these career quizzes online every year to like help you with your college choices, and they're so bad. Like I'm just like, why? It's ridiculous. They're just trying to get you to go into these very generic like career paths because that's
artist
what
is not on that checklist.
No,
filmmaker's not on that checklist. Entrepreneur.
I got animal processor. Like,
entrepreneur is probably not on there. You know what's probably not on there?
Definitely
you know what's
not
probably
on there.
You know what's probably not on there? I bet you like web developer isn't even on there. I bet you app developer isn't on there. I bet you like
Investor?
investors probably not even on there.
Yeah.
Like
I
those
mean,
are all not unreasonable things to do.
yeah. And in high school too, like all of the art kids or the kids who even were doing like different things, I didn't even hear about them because they probably weren't really talking about it that often because it wasn't like a popular thing to do. But even the art kids were like looked down on. Like anyone who's going to college for theater, it was like, why are they doing that? It's a waste of time. And that was like even going to film school. I had my best friend's mom at one point ask me why I was going to film school because I wouldn't be able to get a job with it. And like she meant it in a nice way, but I was just
Here's the
sitting there
jobs
like,
that
what?
theoretically, because you don't need to go to film school to get these jobs, but here are jobs that are directly tied to somebody who goes to film school. Has your friend's aunt ever heard of something called advertising?
I know.
Has your
It's
friend's aunt
literally
ever
ridiculous.
watched a television commercial? What does she think the people who made that television commercial went to school for? What does she think that the television shows, the Netflix shows, everything that she's ever watched on a screen of any kind, what background, what education does she think is required? What technical ability does she think is required to do that?
Yeah.
And tell me something. What do you think has more money as an industry? Whatever, not to be hyper condescending, whatever she's doing or advertising?
Yeah, I know.
If you tie yourself to the thing that sells things, you will probably always have a place in the world.
Yeah. So, yeah, to go back to your question, Romina, I think like in college, it was kind of a time where I was like, oh, I can actually make my own, like, I can do something different. And then I kind of went through a period where I didn't know what that was. It was very confusing and overwhelming. And I still am sort of there. But now I think I'm starting to make decisions to actually, like, make steps forwards and get out of that stage, I guess, because I've like chosen where I want to go. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that having a change of perspective is always something that's it's something that is underappreciated and not really sought out for, I feel like. And I feel like it should be. That's definitely like aside from lack of information, therein lies lack of perspective, of outside perspective of your neighborhood, your school, your siblings, and your family.
Yeah.
And that kind of perspective doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to influence you and turn you into like this radically different person. I mean, it definitely has in the past for many people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it does mean that you get to see other opportunities, other ways of living, other cultures, other types of music, etc. And that kind of thing makes you a more worldly person. It makes you a more well-rounded person and able to make more responsible choices based on those perspectives and experiences that maybe you necessarily didn't live yourself, but because you've met other people and learned from other people who have lived from those experiences. Like, for example, meeting Roberto and we've had very different experiences, each of us. But we've both sort of landed in like this same kind of realm of what it is to like, tell stories and to help other people and things like that. And, photography, filmmaking, graphic design, stuff like that. And for some reason, like the three of us have been brought together, and we are all bringing in different perspectives. And even you, like what I was saying earlier, age is irrelevant. Experience is key. So for you, Audrey, like you've brought in a different perspective for both of us. Even though we grew up very differently and watching very different things and listening to different music, maybe those things are it's irrelevant to your perspective, to the perspective that you're bringing to the table with us.
Audrey is like a breath of fresh air and like some fresh eyes on like creative stuff. And like also, because again, we've been doing stuff, Romina, creatively for so long that like, we have a way about us of doing things and a way that we see things. Having Audrey around challenges us to think or reconsider those things or even to explain are things not, oh, that's just the way it's done, but to be thoughtful about why it's done and even reconsider it, and whether it still is relevant, whether it still does matter, whether it still does work, you know? And we get to do that without having to have the other baggage of like having kids. Like there's
Right.
like, you know, and we don't have to wait out the years of someone being able to comprehend, you know. So there's that. It's also the fun and enjoyment of introducing someone to something that maybe you saw or grew up with, and then seeing how does someone who doesn't have all of that background or context, do they enjoy it, respond to it, and see it the way that I saw it when it was my first time? That's always interesting too. That's the relationship I have with my younger siblings. Is I love when they, because their age gap with me is closer to like being Audrey's age, is especially my youngest sister's the same age as Audrey. So it's like I like seeing, well, like, how will you respond to this since you have no biased or preconceived notion about it? But with the adulting thing and with the expectations, see, like, I think that we also are in this interesting era where everything is new. And it's funny because I think all of us could probably say, and this is like, and you have older parents, Audrey. So your parents, despite you being a little younger than us, your parents are in the same kind of age tier, I think, as ours. Like, the real truth that's hard to swallow for a lot of people, and the problem sometimes with parents giving their kids and their adult kids advice today, is the fact that if our parents had to start from zero and compete with us today, but weren't given the benefit of youth, like they had to literally, everything is ripped away from everybody and we all have to start over. Our parents, in most cases, won't compete with us and win at this point. Most of our parents probably can't compete in today's job market. Most of all their accumulated knowledge and experience probably isn't sufficient to make them successful if they have to start from zero today. And that's probably really hard and rough. And it's really hard and rough because some people are actually experiencing that now. Some people are having to start over and they're seeing how hard it is. The thing is that a lot of people, when they get very comfortable, they like to give advice to their kids and judge them on that advice, but it doesn't necessarily scale, it doesn't necessarily translate, and it doesn't necessarily work. There are entire industries and career fields that exist now that they've never heard of and that they've never experienced that make an absurd amount of money, and a lot of the stuff they grew up with doesn't exist now or won't exist in 15 years for sure. Like absolutely for. I'm being dead serious when I say to you guys, I'm not convinced that truck driving, warehouse worker, or even cashier is a good job or a job in demand 15 years from now.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that that's true 15 years from now. I'm convinced that robots do most of the warehouse stuff, and that there are adult supervisors over the robots, and that there are mechanics and engineers to repair them, and maybe like, and someone
Maybe they have other
diagnostic,
robots who repair.
that's not
broken
impossible,
ones.
but that's 50 years. But 15, like in 50 years, the robots repair each other or themselves. But in 15
That's
years,
when things go bad.
not necessarily.
No.
Not necessarily.
Yes. That's the end. When they
No, not
start
necessarily.
replacing each
is-
other in like making other robots, like
No,
Yeah.
I think
No.
that's all right. That's
No,
fine.
Listen, robots are already making
Robots.
other gadgets. So for
Robots make
example,
the iPhones,
robots-
not like
right. Robots
they-
are making
they should just-
computers. Robots are making cars, which eventually cars will be self-driving and in themselves robots, because they'll be autonomous in a way. And so robots will be building those cars. And basically what we'll just have is people who will be doing maintenance and making sure that the robots don't take over.
nice.
Hee
Wow. No, but Roberto, when you said earlier about like how our parents, if they had to start over, they don't know about a bunch of industries that exist now. Like
Mhm.
one of the biggest things I've had to navigate over the past couple years is taking my parents' advice, but then also keeping that in mind and at the same time trying to teach them about like these new industries and stuff, because
the grain of salt is, here's what will be always universally true. For the most part, human behavior and socialization will mostly be universal. Like, and you've seen that, Audrey, like that human beings, because remember, even when I talk to you about YouTube stuff, it's always human behavior at the core of it. So you can take their advice on human behavior, human interaction, and logic things if they're only reduced to how people think and how people behave. When it comes to anything that is career-based, I would run it through the gamut of, is this really about or a lesson in human behavior and or negotiation? Because that might be valid. But anything about the viability or the financial side of it that's not down to human behavior or negotiation, I would get another opinion from someone who's actively closer to the industry, the job market, or competitive, or in age, or is entrepreneurial. Taking, for example, if you want to be essentially a creative entrepreneur, you want to be an independent creative.
Yep.
You need to talk to entrepreneurs and people who are independent creatives, not people who are salaried employees.
Yeah.
I say that respectfully, but like it's the reason that I couldn't take career advice beyond negotiating and stuff like that, and even then, from my parents. My parents taught me a lot about the world and how people think, and I learned a lot from my dad's military experience, my mom's nursing experience, but they were never like creative entrepreneurs. My mother was an entrepreneur in the sense of there were some things she did eventually that were entrepreneurial, but not in the way that I do it. Meaning that when she was an entrepreneur, she ran a daycare facility. When she was an entrepreneur, she also ran a nonprofit for a while. If I want to know about 501c3s, I can go to my mother. If I want to know about things in the medical thing, that's her wheelhouse. If I want to know things about like childhood development, teaching young people, all those kind of things, the volunteer system, if I want to know how Navy relief works, if I want to know stuff like that, I can lean on her because she has valid experience there, and those things are pretty consistent. However, anything revolving technology is my wheelhouse, and my parents actually rely on me to child-proof and protect them from viruses at the internet at this point. You know, my parents are approaching that age of like getting ready to get Social Security. They need me to protect them from internet scams and phishing scams and people stealing their Social Security number. My parents need me to child-proof the internet for them. I'm not even joking. So like, but my advice to you is, it's not that I'm saying don't listen to your parents. I'm saying find out where their advice applies and where it's reasonable to expect them to have insight and expertise that's valid, versus look at them as human beings where it's possible that they may not be subject matter experts and might be out of their depth. You might be out of your depth. There are things I'm not a subject matter expert on.
Yeah. My parents are both pretty entrepreneurial, so that's been helpful. But definitely when it comes to the creative side, nah.
Creative entrepreneurship is completely different. Creative entrepreneurship is completely different because there's almost zero cost to entry outside of materials. There's no need for a brick and mortar. And if you can solo entrepreneur for a very long time, so you may not need any HR background. I did for a very long time, you know? Romina, what are your thoughts?
I have 1,000 thoughts right now.
Romina always has 1,000 thoughts.
I do, actually. It's both a burden and a blessing. But I feel like having so I think I kind of talked about this before, where I mentioned my life lessons board on Trello and talked about how parents typically want you to have a better life than they had, even if it requires them either losing you or having you further away, or et cetera, even if it means sacrificing something that they hold very dear. But at the bottom of that, what they really want is just the best life for you, and they want you to have a better life than what they had, which is often what leads people to move away, you know, to a different country and things like that, because they have better opportunities in other countries. And but sometimes those kinds of biases of like, you know, the relationship between them can create a bias that will hinder that good advice of like, yeah, you know what, you should go to that country, you should go to the United States because it's, you know, you'll get better opportunities and all that stuff, and you should go. And that kind of that kind of advice, it takes a very strong willpower for a parent to give that kind of advice, because of the fact that, they have that bias of, well, if I give them that advice, they're probably going to take it, and then they're going to go away from me forever.
Yeah.
So it is difficult for parents to give unbiased advice, just because of the emotions that go in, that are tied to it. But it doesn't mean that they don't have that advice.
I think that you have to always work backwards from your goals. To your point, Romina, they may not always have a perspective that, one, lacks any of their biases, but they also may not have the lived experience to really offer you the value that you're looking for. It's not that they have nothing of value to contribute, it's that it's not appropriate to you, because
Right.
like there's like I'll use again my own parents as an example. My parents can't tell me how to be a creative entrepreneur because they've never done it. They also, my parents can't tell me how to become a millionaire when that's a goal of mine, or a multimillionaire, because they've
Right.
never done it. They've never done it. In my life, I've earned in a fraction of the time. Like, my lifetime earnings are more than my parents' lifetime earnings, even though I've lived 20 something years less than them, which is hard to say. And I'm not trying to say that or from a position of privilege or any of those things. I'm trying to say that my journey was different than theirs, because I went to being an entrepreneur versus working within a system, and I went to being a certain type of entrepreneur, and I had opportunities they didn't have. Comparatively to my parents, you can make an argument for me being privileged compared to them, because the era that they grew up in, racial tensions were very different, opportunities were different. My dad was an immigrant. My mother was raised as an immigrant. She was born here, but she actually grew up initially in Panama after being born here. So like, I have a straight up immigrant background in the fact that I'm a first generation American. I'm a third culture kid. Like, and there's a lot that's just different from me. I don't know that I would be successful going back into my parents' era. I would have about the same level of success as them, because I would have the same limitations and opportunities as them. And arguably, maybe like my unique makeup makes me slightly ahead or slightly behind. Who knows? I don't know. I was born now. So what I'm saying, Audrey and Romina, is this, is like, I think that there's something to be said for the value of working backwards from a goal that you have, and that you have to take advice from people who have either achieved it or are close to achieving it or are on the same journey with you. But someone who's on a completely different journey, they may not be able to give you something that directly correlates to their goals. You have to figure out where this is valuable and weigh the priority of that, because it might be something that's valuable to you as a human, not as somebody that is on a journey, but somebody that is a human. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, there's things that my parents have told me that are valuable human lessons, but by themselves bring me no closer to like my ultimate goals. Like, I want to do
Right.
like you guys know about my one of my quote unquote secret goals. I want to do a $10 million venture fund for creators to like
World
give
domination?
arts. Huh?
What? World domination?
Well, there's that one, but like, but I want to. You guys know I want to do
Don't
a 10
expose me,
million.
Romina.
You guys know I want to do a $10 million venture fund,
Right.
where I get a bunch of people who were successful entrepreneurs, creative or otherwise, to put together their money and put together 10 millions in venture funding to help put money and resources into creative people, whether they want to be creative entrepreneurs or whether they just want to be independent artists, filmmakers, theater performances, playwrights, dancers. Like, what can we do to help creative people, the humanities, that kind of thing? There has to be funding behind that, and I want to do a $10 million fund, and then eventually, when we prove that successful, I want to do a $100 million raise. I can't do that without becoming a millionaire first, because people respect you when you have your own skin in the game, and when you can ask millionaires for money if you are one. You know what I'm saying? It's easier.
Right.
You can do it without that. I just think that that's the expedient path to my goals, so that I do it before I die. My parents can't necessarily tell me how to accomplish that. They can't tell me how to become someone who can do that. So then I had to look for people afar or in my circle, or build myself into someone who can reach the people who could tell me that. And I think that's one of the other challenges, is that adulting is about, for people, the framework of, like we said, picking a default future from the community barrel, and it has nothing to do with what you want as a person individually anymore. Like it hasn't, I don't think it ever did even in our parents' time. In our parents' time, the framework of everything in society was not about what they wanted or who they were. It was about do these things or you don't count. Do these things or you're not accepted. Do these things or you're not a worthwhile, well-rounded person. Do these things or you failed.
This is a part where Audrey says, dang.
Dang!
Um,
Every long rant.
So, contractor's POV says, but don't you think even if they tell you how they did it, the motivations would be different, and when you get to the finish line, you might not feel the same? No, I feel like how you feel at the finish line is irrelevant.
It has nothing to do with the process either.
Yeah, and regardless, you can tell someone how to get from one end of the hallway to the other, but what they experience on that journey, on that walk, might be completely different. I mean, they might run into a crazy neighbor who like walks out with like a sledgehammer, like, you know, whatever happens to them from getting from point A to point B is not going to be the same. You could even tell them exactly the different stops that you made, and there will still be variables. And because of those variables, the output is going to be slightly different.
I'll tell you something my parents did very well that I don't think I try to give them credit for, but they like took crap from all the relatives and all the other parents forever with me. But I turned out fine. I turned out pretty awesome, I think. I hope. They at least are proud of me. Like my parents never told me what to be, and they never told me who to be, and they never told me what to believe in, and they never told me that I absolutely had to do something or they wouldn't respect me. They never made me really, they never decided for me who I was or who I was going to be. What they did was they focused on making sure that I was someone who at least would have a moral code and would act with integrity, that I would value and care about what the truth is. And like, I actually am more obsessed with it than people realize. Like they made me a seeker of knowledge, a seeker of truth. They made sure that I was intellectually curious. They taught me how to learn and teach myself, how to think critically, how to challenge people, how to challenge myself. They gave me tools and got out of my way because they knew that there were things I wanted to do that they didn't understand. They knew they had a weird kid. They knew they had a smart kid, and they knew they wouldn't always be there to help me. So they gave me everything they could think of to allow me to help myself. And where it counted the most, to be honest, they stayed out of my way and they supported me in what I was trying to do and made it okay for me to try. And if I failed, they would be there for me to the best of their ability. You know, they weren't able to always do that financially, by the way. For the most part, they weren't able to do that a lot financially. They did what they could with what little they had, and they had 3 other kids to think about, right? So I would say that the most valuable thing is they let me be myself. They did not put any limitations on me being myself, and they didn't tell me what I couldn't do, and they didn't tell me that it wasn't allowed. They just wouldn't let me they would not let me be for lack of any better word, they wouldn't let me be a little prick, you know? They wouldn't let me be somebody that didn't have a good value system. That was the extent of it. And mostly they just let me figure myself out. And then if I wanted help with something, I just needed to know that I could trust them and I could ask. The answer wouldn't always be yes, but it would usually be we'll try.
I can relate to that. I think my parents have that same mindset where they, like, at the end of the day, they just want me to do something that I want to do because they never had really that opportunity. But they also are very pragmatic and they, you know, voice their, you know, they give advice and all that, but from a pretty pragmatic standpoint, which is because they had to be when they were, you know, it's kind of a realistic thing to do. So, I mean, I appreciate all of that. I think it's really important to balance that.
I'm just going to make enough money to where my kids will never have to be realistic.
Dang.
I think that's what happened with the Kardashians.
But I think that's fair. I think that like people talk about this whole like, oh,
Well,
why
I'm
do you
not
want
against
to
it.
what like people talk about
Yeah,
this whole though,
Kardashians.
why do you want to make money?
Yeah.
Like my uncle right now is busting his hump and doing everything so that my cousin, his son is 13, and my uncle just bought him a real estate property. Like my uncle obviously is in charge of it and does everything and pays for it, but he says, "Son," he's like, "Look across the street over there. You see that house over there?" And he goes, "Yeah." He's like, "That's yours. I did that for you. Like this house that we're in, this is yours after me. I've got tenants here. Like we own this. We're like paying, like they're paying everything, and it's like, and when I'm gone, you're having this, and you're having two more, and you can do anything you want in life because that's my gift to you." That's like he was able to tell my cousin for his 13th birthday, and my uncle works like he works in the bowels of New York City for the MTA, and like
Is he looking for any other nieces or nephews? I'm asking for a friend.
And by the way, my uncle's not rich. My uncle is a working stiff. My uncle's a working stiff. It's just that he put every dime that he has into this because he wants better for his son than what he had. He doesn't want his son to ever have to work for somebody else if he doesn't want to. He wants his son to not have to choose between his ambition and his creativity and what's in his soul. Because my uncle's an artist. He just never got to be it full time ever. And he doesn't want that for his kid.
I think we all kind of choose, even if we don't do it on purpose, we all kind of choose this path and this mission, this purpose that we have in our life. And for instance, there's this woman. There's a conservation efforts for cheetahs in South Africa. And Anne Van Dyke is this lady who's basically like the Jane Goodall of cheetahs, and she's developed a way for cheetahs to breed in captivity, which is very important towards the preservation of the species. Now, this woman, she did not get married, and she did not have any children. She's dedicated her entire life to preserving the species of cheetahs. And so I think that's something to say about not just, animal conservation. Those are very extreme cases, people like Jane Goodall and Anne Van Dyke. But there are people who are just as, like you say, Roberto, that they dedicate their entire life to say, I'm making this sacrifice because I want my children, or I want my niece, to have a better life. I want my sister to have a better life. And that's, and those are the kinds of sacrifices that generally parents will make as well, where they haven't lived or they haven't fulfilled some of their dreams in order to pave a path for their children to do so, or for others to do so.
Yes.
All right.
Ding.
Ding. The dang bell has rung. I think with that, we should probably wrap up this episode if you want to start thinking about your fancy outro, Roberto. Meanwhile, if anybody has any last thoughts on that.
I do want to. I'm gonna when we wrap up, because like I think we got a few minutes here because it's not that late. But like what something
we've been going for an hour, Roberto.
I know, but it's not like we haven't gone a little overboard before. But this topic is something I think is very valuable to like our listeners and our viewers, and I think that it's a super important conversation even for us as friends. It's like something that I think about is the fact, because we talked earlier, we've danced a lot around this, but like the adult responsibilities thing, right? Like I think that what a responsible adult looks like, we should redefine that, and we should kind of have a better understanding for it as individuals, because I think people check all the boxes and they're often miserable. And then sometimes, again, they check all the boxes that they were told to. Like they check the 1950s box of being an adult. I'm not even sure that it was really that satisfying for a lot of those people then, because let's be very real about something. You see a lot of people, most people conform to the framework of society, and a lot of people have the rhetoric now, even now, And here's something interesting, because like I like talking about this idea of front loading your life, and you're at an age, Audrey, where this might be really actionable advice. So actually, this is the place I want to go, and maybe we go here for just 5 or 10 more minutes. But Audrey, okay, so
5 minutes.
come on, give me 10. But like, but like, here's the
I
thing.
want to roll, Romina.
Here's the thing. So people right now are on this kick about this idea of like, oh, they're like, people are really anti-hard work right now. You know that. People are anti-hard work, and they're saying, well, what if people work hard and it doesn't amount to nothing? And I keep insisting that people who say they worked hard and it didn't amount to anything, or they worked just as hard as somebody else, they probably didn't work as hard as somebody else that they're looking at, and 2, they didn't do the same hard work and they didn't work on the same things. Just working hard doesn't cut it if you're working hard on the wrong things. And as creative people, as artists, we know that, and people don't like when you say that. They don't like when you throw that back at them in their face. But the reality is that sometimes you're just working hard on things because you have no self-awareness, and you're working hard on things that you either know don't produce value for you and go anywhere, or you're working hard on things you know damn well in your heart you're not any good at. And, you know, we've talked about this. There's no self-awareness. But you're 21 now, Audrey?
Yep.
You're 21 now.
Heck yeah.
Okay. You're at that age in life where you're going to get pulled in a lot of directions, and to where at least you have a lot of self-awareness, thank God, and you have like good people in your life, you know, like me and Romina.
I thought you were gonna say you're at that point in your life where you're gonna get pulled over by the cops. I don't know why I thought that's where that sentence was gonna go.
Now, are you okay?
Like, are you okay,
Are you
Romina?
hiding something?
Like, is everything all right there, Romina?
Because I don't know, I thought like 21, and then you said the word pool, and I don't know, just like my brain. I'm telling you, that's all right. Continue.
But like, you're like, have you noticed that there are a lot of people in your generation, maybe not in your immediate circle, but you hang on the interwebs, Audrey, like people are anti-hard work. People are pulling this whole, oh, live your life while you're young and do all this stuff and have fun and like, don't work yourself to death and don't work hard. And they have all this. And the thing is,
it's kind of like a I'm young, so I don't need to worry about it mindset.
BS though, because it's the stupidest thing. Because here's the thing. People, like, what do you think's going to happen? Do people have this, because like me and Romina are over 30, so like we know better. Like, here's the thing. You get older, things aren't as easy as they used to be. Learning new stuff isn't as easy as it used to be. You don't have the same spring in your step. You don't have the same energy. It's just like every decade, life actually gets incrementally harder every decade, to be very real with you. And everything is based on the foundation of your 20s and 30s for the most part when it comes to that. The health choices you make, the career choices you make, your best earning years are from age 20 to age 40. And people refuse to front load as much of that in their life as possible. And then they wonder how people, no offense to anybody, they wonder how someone becomes a 65-year-old greeter at Walmart. They wonder why somebody is 70 and still driving Uber. It ain't because they're lonely. Sometimes it is. It ain't because they like are doing it for the fun. Sometimes it is, but like most of the time it's not. And I have nothing against those people, and I wish they had an easier life, but I almost guarantee you that there are decisions at some point, and this isn't a blame game. I'm saying that there are natural consequences for every decision that we make, whether we like them or not, no matter how well intentioned. And you're at an age where I see a lot of people are going to criticize your choices, your hard work, the efforts that you're making, and tell you, oh, you're going to regret not having fun now. I think more of them are going to regret all this fun that they had now when life gets hard for them after 35 and they're not able to contribute nearly enough market value to protect them from how cruel life can be.
I saw this problem in mindset a lot in college, which was one of the reasons why it was hard for me to make friends. Like after I changed schools, because everyone's just kind of in this bubble and they're not thinking about life. Well, they're thinking about life after college, but I don't know. There's this mindset of I'm young, I'm going to have fun now, and like kind of worry about the adult like career development, like really think about it and really start making actual plans towards it till after. And it's kind of like it's almost like a Band-Aid, I think, for a lot of people.
You gotta live an intentional life. Like I said, remember working backwards from your goals? People don't think about the life they want to have from like when you're 20, you don't think about living to 30. Like 30 seems old when you're 20 and it seems like a long ways away. But that's probably if you don't hang out with people that are older than you, and you know, you have the benefit of hanging out with people who have life experience and careers and so on and so forth. You know, you hang out with us, you've met people like Peter, you've met people who have lived a life, you know what I'm saying? So you know, and it's not just your parents, it's not this far off nebulous thing. And so I think that makes a difference because I hung out with older people, so I realized, oh crap, I'm going to get old one day.
I think it's good to, you know, constantly be aware, and like it gets you to actually do things. And I don't know, like I'm not bashing my height, like some of my older friends and people I met in college who like kind of, I'm a little worried sometimes when I meet these people because I'm like, dude, it's college is like a Band-Aid and they don't know where they want to go. And then I'm worried that once they leave, they're going to have a degree, but that's like their like crutch, you know?
Almost everybody I know,
that's
homie.
it.
Almost everybody I know, homie.
Yeah. And if they change their mind or if it's not actually what they want to do and they haven't really thought about it because they've just been having fun for 4 years, like I'm worried for them when it comes to that. Like when I met more YouTube friends and creators, people who are actively like going out of their way, taking risks, like kind of not really going a straight line.
They want, and
they're going for something. They're not lost, and that's a misconception I find a lot of the time. Yeah. It's like just because you're going off the path, it doesn't mean you're necessarily lost. You know, you're gonna figure it out.
It means
you're smart about your decisions.
Exploring is not the same thing as wandering.
Yes, isn't there like a cheesy quote that's like,
oh my goodness,
all who wander aren't lost.
All those who wander are not lost. Like, yeah, no.
That's gonna be her next tattoo.
That's a whole thing, though.
I'll give her some birds.
That's a whole thing because there's an intentionality. You can wander or explore, and you can be intentional about that. It doesn't mean you're lost. You know where you want to be. You're just deciding that you may not be romantic about how you get there. And I think that that's fine.
So I think one of the most important things, so you guys know, I talked about this in my, so we have a text message group chat with some friends. And I mentioned, I think this was last week, was it? That I had a dream where I had a dream where I had created an acronym. It was Lily. And Lily, I knew that it had like the words like live your life, like it had something like that in it, and it was like a block on my calendar that I had set. I would created like this system in my dream, right? But of course, you know, Romina, this is what my dreams are like. I create systems and calendars. So
create spreadsheets in your dream.
Yeah.
I created this system and I called it Lily, and I knew that it stood for something. And some of the words were live your life. And anyway, I messaged these guys and I was like, guys, I had this dream. I can't figure out what the words are. Anyway, Roberto came up with some stuff. And basically, we ended up with
just
live
spelling
your
it differently.
Life intentionally.
Yeah.
And so Lily
Lili.
Yeah. Lyli. So it's live your life intentionally. And I actually put it on my agenda. So I designed my own weekly agenda because I couldn't find one that I liked. So I made my own, and I decided to write that down at the bottom of it. So now it's there in my face all the time. And so talking about like creating a map, I actually created a journal, and we can actually talk about this like in another episode if you guys want to dive deeper into it, because I can definitely go into like 30 minutes of just talking about it. But I'll show you guys on, for those of you who are watching live, and if you aren't watching live, then you might want to fast forward to like the 1 hour and 20-minute mark. If you want to take a look at my journals.
Do you think we should start creating timestamps for the show?
We can definitely start creating timestamp. Well, I mean, I just mentioned it right now. So I feel like our listeners are not lazy. So if I give them a timestamp and they're interested, they are going to scrub. They're going to scrub to it. So I'm not going to lay it all out for them. You know, I'll let them map it out themselves. So anyway, I've started journaling and kind of thinking more about like mapping stuff out. And basically what I've done like on this page here is I've put a list of current stuff that I'm doing and then a list of future stuff that I would like to be doing. And then on the bottom is like a summary of the things that I would need to be focusing on. And the highlighted thing is something that I've already done on that. And so one of the like missions that I wrote down for myself is tell stories, bring people together, improve the world. So these are the three facets of my life, right, that I would like to focus on. And this is just through journaling, just writing some thoughts out. And I have another journal here where I've also expanded on that idea.
Is that a bullet journal?
This is, Audrey, just because I have a journal does not make it a bullet journal.
But you need that for the YouTube algorithm.
I need it for the, all right, well, next episode, we'll call it Romina's bullet journal, even though it's not the case. And then you can talk about your bullet journal, Audrey. So on this journal, like I've expanded on those three different facets, which is tell stories, bring people together, and improve the world, and how I'm going to be doing those things. So like some examples of like improve the world is volunteering at animal reserves, science labs, etc., disaster relief, helping to build wells, because that's something that I would like to do, bringing fresh water to places that are lacking in water, participate in more cleanups, because that's something that I can do locally. I don't have to travel to some foreign land to do that. And so this kind of stuff is basically breaking down like the big goals, the big things, the big ideas and dreams that I have. And it's really been helping me just kind of figure out, like just this past week, I let go of a client because it didn't square in with this picture that I had painted for myself. And speaking about pictures, one of the things that I do actually is 3 years ago, I did this for the first time, which is get a journal, and on one page, draw current me, and then put different things, goals and things that I'm doing, habits, etc. And then on another page, put future me and draw myself, what I look like, how I envision myself, where I'd like to be, etc. And the habits that I have as future me.
You legit have a vision for your life.
Yeah, exactly.
You realize how few people have that? And do you realize that that's something literally the 1% of people, not the ones born to wealth, but the 1% of people that are the majority, the 85% of people who build themselves from nothing, that's what they do, Romina? That like they have a vision for their life. Their life is not random. Their life is not luck. Their life is not chance, because they're not just reacting to the world. They have a place they want to be. It's built. Yeah.
So I guess next episode, we'll talk about bullet journals and how to build the life you want.
Yeah, I guess but do you realize that that's like the big thing that like I think I was even trying to get to around this whole adulting thing, is that the framework for most people as adults is broken. It's like when I gave the gaming analogy, they're literally just button mashing their way through the video game of life versus like, okay, this was a crappy tutorial. Let me take $20 and go buy the goddamn strategy guide. Like there's you know, legit though, but you'd have to also know, well, if it's an RPG, if it's like an MMORPG, it's like, okay, how do I become, how do I become the best Death Knight I can possibly be, right? How do I become the best Death Knight that I can possibly be? I can't play like a healer. I can't play by the rules of like the healer. I can't play by the rules of the warrior. I can't be a rogue. I have to figure out what would it look like to be the best Death Knight that I can be. You know, like how do I become that ultimate dark paladin? So I mean, but seriously, you have to figure out. Sometimes you're in a family or in a life or in a friend group, and you realize, gee, one of these things is not like the other, and it's me. And you might have to figure out that there is a vision that you have to have for your life. And the reality is that someone may not have an answer for that for you. You might have to ignore a lot of what sounds like good advice in order to build that vision, because the person you want to be, maybe they've never been built before. Maybe maybe you will be the first of your kind, the first of your name. You know, like that's a real thing that people, but it sounds so audacious. It sounds so ambitious. And it also sounds, how dare you? Does that mean that you want to be elitist? Is my life or my choices or my culture not good enough for you? And people get really offended by that. The fact that you don't want to be average, or you don't want, I get a lot of crap for saying that, well, like people choose to be above average, and people say that's BS and they say it's elitist. And I'm like, somebody who chooses to not conform and doesn't give in to peer pressure and doesn't drink or take drugs or do that, like that's somebody, that's being above average, right? Is this simple fact of not caving into peer pressure is above average. Making a choice to decide that what you care about might be different than your parents and being willing to maybe go to war with them over it, guess what? That's an above average choice too, because it's just a different choice than what most people would make. And saying you're above average isn't about an elitist perspective of being better. It's about being an outlier and choosing to be different. It's about nonconformity. It's about individuality. People who prioritize individuality are above average. And what I mean by that is, as a result of different choices, weird outlier choices, they usually produce abnormal results that, when compared to the results that other people get, are above average. That's a choice. If you do normal things, you will have a normal life. If you choose normal things, here's what you can expect in life. You can expect, like, the majority of 60% of Americans probably to live paycheck to paycheck and not have $1,000 in the bank, because that's what average people do. That is the average. That is what being average is. Being average is being part of the 80% of people who don't have $10,000 in savings. Being average is making the median average salary in America, which means it's a maximum usually of about $55,000 a year. I'm not saying that makes you a bad person. I'm not saying that it makes you a stupid person. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm saying that if you want a life that's not that, you will have to do things that are different than everyone around you, because that's the road that they're on. And that's usually where they end up. Those are the net results that their choices produce. You will have to make above average choices. You will have to do things they don't do.
Oof. Dang. Where's the dang squad?
Dang da da dang da dang da dang 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 da da dang da dang da dang.
So Michael in the chat actually suggested that maybe sometime we can do an extended live show where we actually just do the outro, we cut it, and we just put the podcast out there, but we continue live. So we give people a little treat.
Maybe.
I mean, here's the thing. I hate podcasts that are anything over an hour. And that's just me. And here I am on a podcast that has lasted an hour and a half.
That's my fault.
For like half of the episodes.
That's my fault.
So I feel like I feel like this is not something that I'm totally against. Plus, I think it's kind of fun. Like, if we just kind of are like, okay, guys, well, for those of you who are listening, this is it. But if you're tuning in live with us tonight, you're getting an extra treat, because we're going to be talking about Ninja Turtles for the next hour.
Enticing.
Interesting. Well, the one thing is that we'd have to see how YouTube handles the post edit. You know what I mean? Like,
well, we wouldn't do it for post. We would just do it for like the podcast that we.
What, the audio?
Yeah, just the audio. We just cut the audio so that it's just the audio that's, you know what I'm saying?
Oh.
Like, just the actual podcast episode ends.
But the
at whatever
YouTube
time
video
is. But the YouTube videos, yeah.
I guess that could be an incentive to watch the videos versus the just listening to the audio.
Yeah. I mean, it might be something fun to do. Just, I'm not suggesting we do that every time, but
possibly
might be fun to do at some point.
If it makes you happier.
Listen, you know what makes me happier? Ending a podcast at the 1 hour mark.
Wow.
So
hey,
the salt is
real. That's some shade. That's some salt and some shade. Like, actually, maybe that's a hoodie. Salt and shade. Salt and shade. Heck, that's a good name for a podcast. Salt and shade.
Wow. Really? Are you going to go start another podcast without us?
I might. No, I already have. I already have my own podcast that I haven't done season 3 of yet. Which you guys are welcome to each be
you could do
on
a NARP episode.
On my podcast? Yeah. Well, you guys can talk about NARP.
Okay, so basically we're gonna do NARP, but
no, I meant like I meant NARP episode, like all 3 of us, not.
Oh, I
NARP.
see what you're. Okay, yeah. Actually, we could do that on my show. I'm fine with you guys coming to my program and chopping it up with me.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, no, it'd be fun. And I can look horrible interrupting people. So, yeah.
Will you give us some like outline? Are we gonna have like pointers or something, or how do you? What's your process for this?
We'll come up with a topic. We'll talk in our group chat, and we'll come up with a topic. We'll come up with something fun that highlights you guys, and where I can ask more questions instead of interjecting, and then I don't have to look horrible, and that will play better, and then that will be better for my PR and everything like that. Not that I really give a shit about that. And
It all comes back to this.
I'm half joking because that's a real thing. People do some things because it looks good or it makes them look good instead of being themselves.
Ding.
Ding. But yeah,
Right,
yeah, you guys are welcome on the Create Something Awesome Today podcast. We'll figure it out.
Thank you. I'm ready to create something awesome today.
You already did.
Hey, slam dunk.
I think we should wrap this up.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, no,
now who's in a hurry?
Yeah, right? Right.
Jeez. She's young. And look at her. She's like rushing us. We're old, Audrey.
Sorry, Grandma. I didn't mean to rush you.
You did not just call me Grandma. All right, guys. This is the time for us to wrap up. This may be the longest one. No, actually, it isn't. I
Not
believe
even
the
close.
one.
We had one that's like 2 hours.
Yeah, that's when I wasn't involved. Because you bet when I'm involved, that would not happen.
Wait a minute. You weren't involved? Was that like...
Yeah, that
Are
was
you
the one
sure?
where... Yeah, it was you and Audrey by yourself. Oh, are you double checking this? We need to check this after. What are
So
you
wait,
doing?
am I the only one who's never missed a podcast?
Well,
Yeah, but you know what? It balances out because you were late once for 40 minutes. You were 40 minutes late.
That's
negative
fair.
40.
So
Was it 40? Was it 40?
it was 40 minutes. We started
Selena
after
remembers exactly.
Yeah.
That's my
Remember my memory? I remember my computer screen and the
that's my-
timestamp.
That's my bad. Okay, but I've never missed a show. So
No.
The podcast indeed runs on RST, Roberto Standard Time. And with
Yes.
that, I feel like we are wrapping things up. And Roberto just keeps
our
stalling.
fans, hashtag Roberto Standard
Roberto's
Time.
stalling because he's trying to come up with an outro.
No, I've got an outro for you.
All right,
guys,
then
we
show
can-
us.
We can wrap.
Prove
All
it.
right.
Prove it.
Thank you for listening to the No Assembly Required podcast, a podcast where we talk about nothing for an hour and 40 minutes. This has been a special episode brought to you by your host, Grandma RedRomina, as well as your second host, Audrey, the girl who still only remembers the first 150 Pokemon in the series. And, of course, your final host, Roberto Blake, who lives specifically to torment his co-host and drag out this show for as long as possible for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you for listening. This has been filmed in front of a live YouTube audience. Please listen to the No Assembly Required podcast in all the places that podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcast, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher Radio. Please leave us a review and a rating and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more with that notification bell. This has been the No Assembly Required podcast. No audience members were harmed in the filming of this episode, only my co-host. NARP.